I feel so
Man, Pat, man.
I got to see Rogue One, a Star Wars story in theatism. Oh, I'm jazzed.
Yes.
Am I the only one that got to see
No,
this
man, I
masterpiece?
got to
Did
see
you see
this
it too?
I
got
did
to-
not. Should we think?
Okay, I'm not the
Oh.
only one.
Should we
Should we
sing
exit
the
the room?
theme
This
song?
movie made some money this week too. I think it was like 155.
Yeah, this movie
155 million.
pulled
Yeah.
crazy numbers for very good reason. And we're not going to give any spoilers, but I do want to start off by saying this might be my favorite Star Wars.
Really?
You know
That's
what?
that's a
Oh,
statement
wow.
because
Yeah.
I tried to get him to get spoilers for the last Star Wars movie we reviewed for like 3 weeks, and he was like, "Man, we ain't doing spoilers this
Very
week."
necessary.
Like, Pat, what's your problem? No, we ain't doing spoilers this week. I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, it's
Seriously,
a month
some
into it."
people have, some
Let's
people
go.
have not seen it. And
You're right,
I,
and I completely agree with you. But like, I'm really happy for you that you've seen this movie, that you enjoyed this much, and
you
I'm
sound like-
actually right behind you too. I
Okay.
do enjoy this movie. I do enjoy this
I
movie
was
a lot.
scared for a second. You sound like you may have had a difference of
I
opinion.
know,
We may have
no.
had it out. Be like Johnny, hold his legs down.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
No, I like this
keep
movie
hearing-
because there was a
keep
lot of
hearing that, man.
diversity in it. There was a lot of like characters that I didn't think I was gonna like, initially enjoy. And there was like a Zoe Toitri character in this movie. There was like this blind, the Asian master
There
of the
was
sword and stuff like that. That was in this.
representation for other races. There was robot citizens in this
Yeah.
one that you don't really see outside of the background figures in the other Star Wars movies. This is technically a background.
So
Star
kind of
Wars movie.
expanded out though as well, and it was just like I thought like they did great. I didn't really buy into most of the characters, but the ones I did, I really enjoyed.
Well, I think this one was the first one that is. Well, we're talking about Star Wars Rogue One. Anyone who hasn't seen it, this is pretty much a side story outside of the general Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. So can you
What-
actually?
what
I
is
actually
Jedi and
don't
all
think
that
it's
stuff.
a
Can you-
side story.
I heard it was
This
in
is-
between episode 1 and 2. I mean, sorry,
No.
5 and 6 is what I
It's
heard.
3 and 4.
No,
It
can you
takes place
determine
in
that
between.
either? Can you determine that? I mean, how do you break
You can
this
try.
down?
No, you absolutely can. Remember what happened
Okay.
at the end. That last like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That is
You know
the
what I'm
very
talking about? That
And,
reveal?
and we're talking about what
There's-
movie? We're talking about the last Star Wars.
Rogue
No,
One.
We're talking about Rogue One.
Talking
Okay.
about Rogue One.
And I can't actually reveal how it's a side story because that would be a major spoiler. But this is a side story that takes place between episode 3 and A New Hope.
Okay.
Alright.
It's like a
Maybe-
clone's
we could
clone's
probably-
clone.
We could probably
Yeah.
warn people if we're
Okay.
going to mention something spoilery.
We're not mentioning spoilers. Adam, you want to break down the actual?
No,
plot of
I
this
think you
sucker,
should break down this because I'm actually lost in my own
Alright.
Not a problem.
thought
Not a
process
problem.
of the
Rogue
whole
One
thing.
is the story of the Johnny. What's up?
No, go ahead.
Rogue One is the story of the Rebel faction. The story of two collections: the designer of the Death Star and the Rebel faction that was first what do you call it, privy to the intel of the Death Star and how they get that back to the rebellion. And the story in between, it seemed like it was going towards this whole, we're talking about family and, ties to origins and someone's the chosen one again and all that BS. And it kind of teases you with that for the first few minutes. That's why I started off sour on this one. It
Right.
turns around real quick once we're introduced to a few more of our main characters, and there's more than one, which I really like in this
Yep.
movie. This isn't harping on
Yes,
it's all about
that's
Luke
it.
and only Luke.
Yes, that's
know?
exactly it.
Yeah. And also it points out that these people are rebels fighting a war. I got the sense of war in this one. I've never gotten that in any of them.
No,
Even,
that's
especially in episode 1 that had battle scenes.
right. You're right.
I never got the sense of this is like war with
Like a
stakes.
war movie, you really didn't feel that way. And
Yeah.
actually, I read an article. I think it was on the Ringer.com, and it was saying it was the best war movie since Saving Private Ryan. And then it made me look at it.
Say the best,
But
it was.
No, that was the article though. Like whether or not you agree or not, you kind of makes you go back and think about it. Like you think about it as a war movie. You don't think about it as like a fantasy, sci-fi, like
No, I can definitely
distant
see that.
whatever
This
movie.
was war.
You think about it
characters
as a
you
war
get to
movie, and then
know.
like I was like, holy crap, you're
They
right.
lose arms?
Yeah.
It's not too far from that, and there was a lot of scenes going on.
Hold on, pause.
I'm just saying they lose arms.
Yes,
Word!
in the Star Wars way. I like the way they did that, though. I like the way they did
Okay.
it.
You know they got to
And-
throw in something, yeah. So
but this was a war movie with stakes that just happened to be set in the Star Wars universe.
Yes.
I loved the crap out of that. That was a revelation I had to see for myself.
yeah, and there was
I've
a lot.
heard
It
people
was
say
shot
there's-
well too, and there was like it's the movie. The movie looked good. The movie was shot well. The movie that had actual
I
scenes.
really appreciate
in it,
that. because
you know what I mean?
felt a lot of times that gets lost when we talk about sci-fi.
Right.
People want to go bigger and better, and it's the hugest thing. It's the ship.
Well, people want to construct these big monstrosities of movies, and they forget to start from the ground floor and actually have like an actual scene
Nothing
with an
ever
actual
looks practical. Things look
an action sequence that actually is a sequence where it's just like a rise and a fall. Like everyone wants to be Spielberg, but no one wants to watch what Spielberg's actually done.
Well, here's
You know what I mean? Like, everyone who wants to go, J.J. Abrams is the greatest thing. J.J. Abrams can't wipe Spielberg's ass. Let's
here's
be
what I try to
honest.
put in perspective, and tell me if I'm off base or not. It's usually when like you see a fight scene in the movie, and you can tell the people that choreographed this have never actually been in a fight.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good because Donnie Yen's in this movie, and Donnie Yen is the best part of this movie for me. And Donnie Yen is, if you don't know him, he's one of like Hong Kong cinema's like legends. He's been Ip Man.
Yep.
Obviously,
Iron
that's
Monkey,
like
he
he's
was
Iron
the
Monkey.
doctor.
He's in so many great Hong Kong cinema movies, and he is basically what I said. This is Saitoichi. He's like the blind like
Samurai.
Figure it this way.
Samurai
Jay,
of this movie.
You said it perfectly outside. The sentence I can sell you on this movie is the guy who trained Bruce Lee as a Jedi.
Yes, and
Yep.
he is in this
Well,
movie, and he is
not
himself,
a Jedi, though.
Yeah. But
Man,
he
he's
is
a
the
guardian.
master. He's a badass,
So those
and
of
that's
us
all
who
you
aren't
need.
intimately familiar with the Star Wars lore as just Johnny,
But
he's a guardian.
He is
Which
not a
is-
Force user, so therefore he is not a
But
Jedi.
he's a Force believer, so he's close enough.
he's blind and he kills everybody, so that's all you need from me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
All right,
sorry,
well,
that's
Johnny,
all you
you've
get.
been pretty silent here while we've been gushing.
Yeah,
I might
hell,
have
Johnny.
need to
Yeah,
wipe down my chair. Go ahead. What do you think about this stuff?
I wouldn't call this a side story, as I'd rather say that Rogue One it basically changes Episode 4. It changes the New Hope. So much in that it is so important to Episode 4 in that I am never going to watch Episode 4 by itself ever again. As far as I'm concerned, Episode 4 is now a 4-hour-long movie with the inclusion of Rogue One. So now I'm just going to go from Rogue One to the end of Episode 4, and boom, I have a full-fledged, really in-depth movie.
Well, then I see exactly what you're saying, and I would agree with you, except for the fact that would make Rogue One a really long movie with a
So
really
is that-
boring second half.
Is that what Disney's building? Is just this one giant roots long like movie?
You know what?
Like, y'all happy now?
I feel like that was originally George Lucas' intent.
This is what we got.
Well,
This is what we got.
Well, look at it this way.
We got this one-legged dude, but he's got one arm now, and he's
This-
just jumping around.
There's an intermission.
This Star Wars
There's an
movie-
intermission. It does the little crawl thing when you're watching Episode 4.
Okay,
So
this is a
you're
Star Wars
good.
movie that had more black people per capita. All right, no.
You're the worst. You're the worst.
All I'll say is I enjoyed the heck out of this one. If anyone's familiar with the Star Wars universe, you know what Rogue One is.
It
when
is
came
good.
out with, and this is pretty much
It
just
is
a
good.
reactionary
It's actually
review
good.
because-
It's actually good.
very. I also want to call out.
But you're
one
gonna see it
specific thing.
anyway. So who the hell are we talking to?
I'm not gonna say that. If we can steer some people away from the debacle that was episode 3, we would have done our job.
See, the thing is, I actually.
Episode 3 wasn't that bad.
Stop right there. All right, this movie. In this movie, they had ships, Debo and other ships. It was an actual war epic where you get a sense of that would be like old triremes ramming each other in like naval battles. This one had attacks on land and in air space. And in space, in air and space. You got to see why X-Wings were like legit, fighting flight vehicles, and why they still pale in comparison to TIE fighters. You got to see why stormtroopers are actually legit soldiers, even more so than Force Awakens, which had the ground troopers, stormtroopers. They can actually be ill. This one blows them out of the water. They were all over the place. They were nasty. They had skills on land. They had skills in air. The pilots were sick. It was sinister. And I really want to spoil something, but I can't.
Don't.
I can't. All I'll say is
Do it!
This
You
movie
can't.
finally shows after 7 movies. I don't know how many books. Why specific characters should be feared, respected, and what makes them ill.
Save it, man.
And
We got
I can't say it, but will you all at least like back me up on this? You
definitely.
You finally
Yeah,
saw.
no, we get it. We
There
get
is
it.
a lot of answers a lot of questions get answered in this movie. It's not like important stuff, but there's certainly like a lot of
Geeky stuff, though. It's
explanations.
important stuff. So, but it makes you excited for other projects too. You know what I mean? I think that's
Yeah.
what it does, and it made me.
Seeing this-
It didn't make me like overly like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, but like it made me like excited where they're gonna go.
Yes.
It paid homage instead, and it didn't deviate too far from where they're gonna, the original stuff, and it really, it just made me excited.
Yeah.
It really did. You know what I mean? It
It-
gave me a great movie, and then it made me like, hey, we're gonna get like a bunch of more of these. So it's like, let's gear up. We had Ryan, Johnson doing the next Star Wars movie. So like, this is gonna be a good thing. This is really gonna be a good thing.
It
I think
connected
it's safe
a
to
lot
say-
of dots.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I recommend it. Adam?
Yep.
Johnny?
Yep.
Yeah, 2 thumbs up, man. That's great.
It was beautiful. Highly recommend
So I told you in the movie, hey, Hitman's in this thing.
it.
Hitman.
Did I not say
He-
Donnie Yen is in this movie?
He
Come on.
totally played
Alright.
Zatoichi though as that character.
He did, yeah.
I saw
This
Zatoichi.
is it. I mean, if you-
Spoilers, because we don't know.
By the way,
we don't know just yet from
Filmstruck
the-
is the greatest website on movies right now. It's basically Netflix for like cinephiles, and you can watch all of Zaitoichi's whole back stuff, like the actual Zaitoichi, like the Blind Swordsman. You
It
can
might
see
be
maybe where this
spoilers though
company-
if you watch Zatoichi before this one.
Yeah.
Well, pace yourself. I mean, see what the audience can derive from it.
Or watch this, which you probably have, and go back. Who knows? That's the
Yeah.
way to do it too.
It's
good.
Maybe. All right, we are shortchanging my man.